Hey guys, I know it's been a while since I put out one of these videos. Things have been really busy in a very wonderful way. We just launched 2 new training courses, so we've been really busy. But I wanted to jump back on track with these videos about how to help clients with specific issues. And today I'm going to talk about how to work with smokers. Now, this is something that I could talk about at great depth. In fact, so much so, we have a 12.5 hour training course on it. But I'm going to keep this really as simple and as brief as possible just to give you some ideas. I'm going to give more of an overview of the specific areas to target when working with these clients. And of course, as always, every client is different. So take this advice to the extent that you have flexibility in how you work with clients. Now, I will post in the description a link to our training program that I might be biased. I'm totally biased. That I happen to think it is one of the best for working with smokers. So if you're looking for a protocol, then click below. Other than that, let's jump in. So when we think about the problem of smoking, there's a lot of different aspects to it. The first is that there is an identity level issue going on. The client says, I am a smoker. Self equals smoker. And in NLP terms, this is a confusion of logical levels. Identity is not the same as behavior. So we want to begin to reframe that right away, because if the client holds on to this identity of being a smoker, or believes that their identity is the sum total of a habit or an activity, it's going to be really difficult to move them forward. And there's lots of opportunity for self-sabotage in those situations. I'm not a smoker. I don't think of myself in terms of not being a smoker or being a non-smoker. My identity is something other than that. And for the clients who come in who want to give up cigarettes, the same is true for them. Their identity is way more than what they think it is. And I should also mention right now that this video is about working with cigarettes. This is not about working with marijuana or anything else. So if your client comes in who wants to stop smoking weed, there's a different approach to that, because the variables at play are different than this, and the experience and the habit formation is somewhat different than that of nicotine in terms of the structure of the problem. Also, and I know that there might be some in the hypnosis community that will push back against this, but if you have a client who comes in who wants to quit cigarettes but doesn't want to give up weed, do not touch the weed habit. That's not what they're asking you to do. They're asking for help with the cigarettes. What else they do in their own time is not our business, and it's not our call. One of the most unethical things that I've come across in a somewhat common circumstance is practitioners imposing the practitioner's worldview on the client. The client hasn't asked for the change, don't do it. Keep it simple. Keep it with what they're asking for in this respect. That doesn't mean that once they get through the session that they might not also give up the other habit. They could do. It depends on how much of a change they're really looking in their overall life. A lot of clients will experience this. A lot of clients also won't. So just be mindful of that. Keep the change on point to what the client is actually asking for. Respect the client's right to make other choices in their own life for themselves. The next component of this is the fact that the client most likely has tried to quit a number of times before they come to see us. Let's face it, guys. We might think we are like the most awesome thing ever, and hypnosis is number one. But we're usually the lowest on the totem pole when it comes to clients. We are the last ditch stop. Most clients who come in who want to quit smoking have tried cold turkey, they've tried with Shantex, they've tried with the patch, they've tried with the gum, they've tried with apps, and anything else you can imagine. And because they've had all those instances of quitting and then picking it back up again, they tend to view it as them not being good at quitting. They tend to think, well, quitting's really hard because I wasn't successful in the past. So it's a really great opportunity to reframe this belief, and it's a very simple reframe, and that is that, look, you were awesome at quitting. You wouldn't have been able to do it so many times and to be a non-smoker for whatever period of time that they were a non-smoker, whether it was a month or 6 months or whatever the case may be. So you can do this. And now we're just going to put things in place so that you stay on that same track. So we want to reframe the instances of failure in the past and make it work in the client's favor. Now, I know I'm going through this really fast, and there's a lot of things I'm leaving out in terms of what I do in the pre-talk. But like I said, I could talk about this for hours. I'm just going to keep it to some main points here. Next, you want to give them some skills for managing the symptoms, if you will, within the first 72 hours of giving up the cigarettes. I tell my clients to smoke their last cigarette the night before they come to see me, and then I don't have them come in until the afternoon because I want them to really be jonesing for a cigarette. I want them to feel the craving, because that's what gives us some great material to work with, because I'll be teaching skills that the client can take outside of the office and apply both to the cravings, the physiological cravings, which do last for 72 hours, or can last for 72 hours. They don't have to. As well as tools that can help them manage the emotional states that in the past would have driven them to smoking. And my favorite go-to for these clients is actually EFT, is tapping for the cravings. And the reason why I like it is because it gives the hands an activity. Smoking doesn't just exist in the head or the mouth, it's also in the hands as a behavior. So if we teach them something like tapping, and however you want to frame it is fine, whether it's energy work or it's a pattern interrupt, whatever the case may be, frame it so that the client is going to be willing to try it, to experience a positive shift from it, and to use it in the outside world. It's great. Like I said, it gives the hands something to do, and it's a really easy way to change states pretty quickly. So this will give them the way to manage the cravings as well as to manage emotions that in the past would have led them to smoking. All right, the next part. I told you we were going to go quick. Smokers are really good at dissociating from outcomes. They're really, really good at thinking that all the terrible side effects that can come from smoking won't happen to them. They associate into the good feeling of the cigarette and dissociate from any consequences. So we want to get them back in touch with the consequences of the smoking. In terms of NLP, what we're building is a propulsion system. And away from motivation, meaning like here's the reasons why not to do this stuff, and then eventually toward motivation, the positive outcomes that are pulling the person forward. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this first step, creating the away from. Some people like the traditional fork in the road. I'm not such a fan of that. I find that it invites too much conscious pushback, even if you're doing it in deep trance, because you still get the yes, but that's not going to be me. So I do something called the P cubed, which is a pattern that I had developed several years ago now, and that puts them in the position of being responsible, but from a different perspective. And if you want to learn more about that, click the link below. But you want to build up a strong enough away from so that the client sees the cigarette and doesn't feel the desire to want it, in fact, feels the opposite at first. What's going to be the final outcome of the propulsion system is not a negative feeling towards the cigarette, it's that they feel nothing towards it. Meaning, I don't even think about it. If I see a pack of cigarettes on the table, I don't really feel anything towards it. Maybe like a hint of like, ugh, but nothing overly strong or big. And we want that for the client, because working with these clients is about creating freedom of choice. Up until now, they haven't had choice, and we're reintroducing choice. So within the P cubed itself, eventually, I am going to flip the narrative, and we're going to be going towards all of the positive outcomes and making them responsible for all of the positive things that will happen in their life as a result of them making the choice to be a non-smoker. All right, next. Clients will have a narrative around the first cigarette. I have never met a client who did not remember their first cigarette. We want to reframe that. And most clients will recall the first cigarette and not like it, in which case we can do things to amp up and revivify that experience. Once again, this goes back to building the away from. Some clients will have the experience of not remembering whether they liked it, in which case we just assume that they liked it, and we do some submodality changes on that movie, making it dark, making it small, making it distant, and so on. And you would do the same submodality shifts with that memory if they had enjoyed the cigarette. Because we want to clear the space, I do something called the smoking destroyer here, which is a type of re-imprinting that actually goes back before, well before, usually years and years before the first cigarette. It's a type of positive regression where you resource the person who's about to have their first cigarette. Once again, click the link below to discover more. Now, from there, we still have a couple more components to the habit. We have the physical component, the actual mindless smoking, the lifting of the cigarette. And it really is, at this point, a mindless pattern. There's a shortcut in the brain for the smoker that is this, and that they can do it and not even think about it. This is, in terms of hypnosis, this is a good example of arm levitation, because they are in trance when they're doing it, when they're smoking. And to work with this behavior, I use a pattern that Sean developed called the tiger pattern that involves anchoring or stealing all of the client's negative anchors and placing it on the cigarette and the hand motion towards the face, and then applying all the positive anchors, all the toward motivations, to the lowering of the hand. And what eventually, if you've done the anchoring job correctly, what eventually happens is the hand won't go up anymore and will actually move away from the cigarette. So we're looking for the reprogramming of the unconscious shortcut. Next. We're getting close to the end, I promise. I know it's a lot of detail here. Next. There still might be a secondary gain that hasn't been addressed. And the client might be aware of it. They'll often tell you it during the intake. And the secondary gain could be around relaxation. It could be around having some time off during the workday. It could be around being with their friends or their spouse. It could be about keeping people at a distance. Those are some of the most common secondary gain issues that I've witnessed with clients in smoking. So we want a way to address this. You can do this through a traditional 6-step reframe. I happen to like a more Ericksonian approach, the dreaming arm, which is actually a 6-step reframe, but it's more overtly trancy, and you get the arm levitation again. So you have a nice convincer in the hypnotic phenomena. And we'll do that to clear up the secondary gain. I will also load in lots of direct suggestion. I know my background is more indirect, however, direct suggestion is really powerful, especially for smokers who come in and they want traditional hypnosis because somebody in their life went and had hypnosis and all their life's problems were solved. So do some direct suggestion because it's going to meet a certain unspoken expectation by the client. After that, bring them out of trance, and then we'll do all sorts of testing, future pacing, do things like offer them the cigarette back and recalibrate for the unconscious response when we test, because some clients are really compliant and they'll consciously show you what they think you want to see, but the unconscious mind doesn't lie. So we're tracking for how the unconscious mind responds when we do that offer of the cigarette, and you notice it through their body language primarily, as well as their tonality and their breathing, if you can spot that. So do testing, future pacing, and send them on their way. Congratulations! On some occasions, and it's not common for me anymore, I should say that my non-smoking sessions last about 2 hours or shortly under. On rare occasion, the work isn't done yet because something else, something like really big in life has come up, something that is very specific to that individual. Because remember, this is mostly, I'm speaking in generalizations here. In which case, whatever that big thing is, we spend a lot of time working through that, in which case, okay, we're not done yet. There's more work to be done. I typically also have my clients who want to quit smoking, they buy a package. It's an initial 2-hour session followed by an hour follow-up a week to 10 days later. And they have the choice. They can either come back and reinforce the work that's already done, celebrate their success. They can use that session to work on something else that they'd like to change. Or if something happens during the week, and this is on the rarer end, and they picked up a cigarette, great, come back, we'll address it. This is an important thing for a lot of clients, and why it's so important to address the issue of identity, because a lot of clients will think that in the future, if they have one cigarette, that automatically makes them a smoker again. It doesn't. So we want to give them some resiliency strategies looped into the 2-hour session, how to bounce back if that should happen. We also want to outframe things like them wanting to test it. I don't walk around testing that I'm a non-smoker. If you're a non-smoker, I'm guessing you don't go around testing it on a regular basis as well. So we want to make sure that the behavioral strategies that they have in place are congruent with that of a non-smoker, because that's going to lessen the chances of things like testing and failure, even though it's not really failure, it's just feedback. So we'll build all of this stuff into the future pacing. Now, if the client is done, they don't need any more work done, they're happy, but they still have this session, I also, as a business model, offer them to hold on to it for a year and they can come back and use it at any time. Or if they want to gift it to somebody else, somebody they know who might be interested in hypnosis for anything, I'll honor that. And that's a really great way to replenish the client list, because smokers are really great referees. They will send their friends, their family, their coworkers, their church or temple friends right to you, because you can't really hide going from being a smoker to being a non-smoker, and then people ask, well, how did you do it? And then they'll say they came to see you. So smokers are great referrers. They're really fantastic at that, and so if you give them this other option, this gifted session, it's even better, and you get a lot of return on that. So that's it for now. If you have questions, post it in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, share, do other YouTube things with this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!